Welcome to today's Qualify at the Intersection. I have two things I want to talk about. The first is, in a nation that is obsessed with protecting womanhood, we must ask, which women are we talking about? I'm talking about today Breonna Taylor, who was killed during a no-knock raid in her own home. Now, the United States Department of Justice took on this case before Donald Trump started. And now this group didn't even recommend prison time for one of the officers who fired his weapon during that. Now, he wasn't the officer who fired the fatal shot. His name is Brett Hankinson, and he is a former Louisville police officer, and he was involved in the raid, and he was actually convicted of violating her civil rights. And so that's what happened. And the judge in the case actually sentenced him to 3 years in prison. But again, that sentence came despite the current Department of Justice shocking recommendation that he serve just 1 day. Just 1 day. Now, when you say that someone should serve just 1 day, you know what you're saying? They shouldn't serve anything at all. And you're sending a message. This life doesn't matter. It's not even worth a day. Now, contrast that with the government that quickly passed the Lake and Riley Act following the very tragic murder of a young white nursing student in Georgia. Her killer was sentenced to life without the possibility of parole, as he should have been. And a federal law, the Lake and Riley Act, was passed, that was passed in her honor. So let's just think about this, okay? So the swiftness and severity of that case, it stands in stark contrast to the pushing and fighting and neglect surrounding Breonna Taylor's death. It tells us something about what we value, what we prioritize, about who gets to be a symbol of justice in this America, right? And again, that 1 day request, that was intentional. That was a spit in your face. So that's about that. And I want to tie that to this other thing. So at the same time, all of this is going on across social media and in right-wing political platforms, there is this growing, I guess you call it cultural movement, that's trying to redefine or reimagine womanhood. Maybe it's trying to make womanhood great again. I don't know. But only a specific kind, okay? So there's this thing called the princess treatment, where you don't say anything, you don't talk, people tell you what to eat, where to go, what to do. And then there's the rise of the trad wife. This is a phenomenon targeting mostly young white women, and they're encouraged to embrace a lifestyle that prioritizes domestic labor. You know, make your own diapers, make your own applesauce, make your own pizza dough, make your own bread. It's submission and it's male financial dominance. Now, let me just say, there's nothing wrong with wanting to be a stay-at-home mom. That is work, that is a job. But this isn't that. On the surface, these aesthetics may appear harmless, like they're supporting that. They even seem aspirational, because when you say princess treatment, who doesn't want to rest and be admired, right? But that's not what this is about. Beneath this curated glow of social media filters is really a revival of patriarchal norms that honestly once rendered women legally and financially dependent on men. So until 1974, women in this country couldn't open credit, couldn't build credit by themselves, couldn't get a credit card or a mortgage without a man. And I think that mortgage thing was an issue up until the 80s, actually. That wasn't a fairy tale. That was being a financial captive, okay? These movements are not about choice in any way. They are about control. And the thing is, they don't exist in a vacuum. None of what I'm talking about exists in a vacuum. This is all part of a political strategy to reassert a social hierarchy, right? And this social hierarchy is one where white men sit at the top and white women return to a place of obedience and dependence. Meanwhile, women of color, especially Black and Indigenous women, we've been missing, raped, all kinds of things. And that seems to be unacknowledged generally. And we are unprotected by the law and systematically ignored. As I say, no one wants to talk about the systematic institution of rape that was slavery. Our DNA speaks to that to this very day. So, Black women were never invited honestly, into this princess club. Even if you see Black women on the internet saying they're trad wives, they're not. When Black women stayed home, they were labeled welfare queens. Remember that? When they raised their children, they were accused of overpopulating. I remember those TV shows. Why are you having so many kids? Stop having all these kids, yelling at them, right? They were victimized. Their pain was dismissed. They're criminalized when they say something happened to them. Yeah, there's no white feminine outcry when Black girls go missing. When we think about the abuses of Jeffrey Epstein's folks versus R. Kelly for all these years, and Jeffrey Epstein, he should be held up to account. But you see the difference, right? There's no MAGA movement for Breonna Taylor. The trad wife and the princess treatment movements promote this, in my mind, a segregated vision of womanhood. One that is aspirational, yes, but also harmful for white women and completely exclusionary of anyone else, really. And the problem is it sanitizes history because these young women don't know history. They don't know about the quiet desperation. It erases oppression, seduces young women with curated fantasies. Ain't nobody making applesauce and bread dough and baby diapers in one day, okay? While quietly advocating for their loss of agency. What these women are being sold is not ease. I used to do divorce and custody for victims of domestic violence. And I can tell you this frequently mimics all the elements of domestic violence. And people say, well, no, nobody's advocating hitting somebody. Look, domestic violence includes physical, financial, and emotional control. It is subjugation dressed up as security. It is dependence with better lighting and a political tactic with pastel colors, right? So, the reason I'm writing this today is because I'm trying to make some connections. And people often say to me, well, what should I do about it? Well, you should become aware. You should talk about it. You should understand that this aesthetic about womanhood can't be one shape, one role, one race. And until Breonna Taylor matters as much as Laken Riley, right? Until Black women are offered some protection, not princess protection, just regular protection, with the same urgency as white women, this country's commitment to this so-called womanhood and all of this creepy stuff on the internet about trad wives and princess living, this is nothing more than a performative nostalgia, but there's something dark underneath it. It's designed to perpetuate patriarchy. And ultimately, it's also designed to perpetuate white supremacy.